Hello, and welcome to Online Church with Fort Alliance. We're so pleased that you've chosen to join us here today. My name is Pastor Ashley, and before we get into our message, just a couple quick announcements. We're working on a new church directory, and we want you to be a part of that. So if you would like to be a part of our church directory, you can go to our website, fortsaskalliance.com, and on that main page, there's a banner that will give you the option to click on that and put all of your information in for the directory. We really hope that you'll choose to be a part of that because that's how we can stay in touch, how we can check in, and we really love to stay connected, and that's more important now than ever. Also want to let our church family know that we are going to be hiring. We are hiring a student ministries pastor, and so that information has been given to our district. The job description is going live, so we want you to be aware of that and to be praying for us as we're looking to fill that new position. And then one more thing, on January 27th at 7 o'clock in the evening here at the church, we're going to be having our first meeting for our short-term Afghan refugee sponsorship short-term missions team. And we are so looking forward to that, to really getting the ball rolling, digging in, and starting to do some good work together on that. So really, it's going to be an introductory session. We're going to be able to have an online question and answer time with someone from First Alliance that we've been connecting there, who's been helping us through this process. And it'll be a time of brainstorming and really figuring out what first steps are moving forward. So if you're interested in being a part of that, we'd love to have you there. If you can let me know that you're coming, that would be great. And then we can just make a plan where to have the meeting and everything like that. And so if you're interested in coming, you can just contact me through the website. Go to fortsaskalliance.com and go to the staff page. You can email me directly through the website. So those are our announcements for this week. Allow me to pray for you before we head into our message. Please bow with me. Heavenly Father, we come before you, Lord, and we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your grace to us. And we thank you that in spite of everything that we find ourselves facing, that we can be overcomers because of you, Jesus, because you overcame. You've given us that ability through you. Lord, I pray that you would bless our time together, that you would speak to our hearts and our minds, that you would soothe souls and spirits. Lord, that you would give direction, that you would show yourself to be who you are, a compassionate and loving Father and friend. Lord, I pray for those who are hurting, who are suffering, who are grieving, as they listen to this. I pray, God, that they would see that your arms are open wide and that you long to wipe their tears and to comfort them. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
He is Jesus, and he, on our behalf, has overcome. And we're in this series called Overcome by the word of their testimony because we want to share testimony of overcome stories as a means to give glory to God, but to also just bless the body, to bless, us who are in the mess and the hurt and in the brokenness of life. And so I'm really excited to introduce both our fellowship right here and those of you who are online as well to my very good friend, Amanda. Welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for such a fun topic.
You are such a poor woman. I'm really sorry about this. Amanda is truly a good friend of mine. I mean every word I'm about to say. She is incredibly wise. She is very strong and totally fierce, while at the same time being immensely gentle and kind. And it's like a odd dichotomy that very few have,
Thank you.
but you do have that. And your friendship, your mentoring me in many ways as well throughout life has been such a blessing to me. And I'm super glad that she's willing to come and share with you guys today.
Thanks, Ken.
She does come with a crappy subject, though.
Yes.
Grief. And we're gonna head into a story of grief and a story of suffering in just a moment or two. But I want you guys to get to know a little bit about Amanda first, and then a little bit about her husband who has graduated.
Graduated.
We may explain that in just a moment here. Who graduated about a year ago, who's passed and gone to be with Jesus. So we're going to get to that. But first, there's actually some super exciting news in your life right now.
Yes, I'm on baby watch.
Baby watch?
Baby watch.
Tell us about that.
Grandbaby number 2. I have a 5-month-old grandson, and I'm expecting another baby this week from a different child.
Obviously.
Just to be clear. So that's very exciting.
And that could happen any minute, actually.
It could.
Your phone is off right now.
Yes, but someone's watching.
Oh, someone's watching it. Now, if after the service, Amanda gets a message and she bolts, now y'all know, okay? It's just grandma's got to do what grandma's got to do, right? Y'all can understand that. So, I mean, that's something super exciting. But in order to have grandbabies, you've had to have a family. Before having a family, you had to meet the love of your life.
That's right.
Whose name is Dale. Now,
Dale,
here's the thing. I'm going to kind of help people get Dale a little bit. It was probably about a year and a half ago, I was doing a little mini series on discipleship, and I talked to you guys about the milkshake man. And the gentleman from my local church at the time who took me under his wing and would take me out for milkshakes, and we would test me, he'd help me process just my anger and my hurts. Well, the milkshake man is your husband. And so that helps kind of bring you guys up to kind of speed and feel like maybe you know a little bit more about the heart of Amanda and Dale. Now, before we get into the story, we want to learn about you and Dale and how you guys met. So let's go back just a couple years.
Just a couple.
And tell us, how did you and Dale meet?
Actually, my dad introduced us in the foyer of the church.
Gotta be a good
in
man.
Lloydminster. I mean, it was meant to be. Dale was going to Bible college at the time, coming back to Lloydminster to work on the rigs in the summer times. And I was at university in Langley, and I had come home, and he knew my parents, and so my dad just casually introduced us in the foyer. And we ended up singles camps together, and college and career, and kind of getting to know each other over the summers. And I chased him until he caught me.
Tell us about that. When did you know? When did you know, like, that Dale was your person, as you would say?
I think I just grew into it. I don't really identify a particular day. And looking back, now that I know what I know about him, he did not date. So when he started showing interest, I should have caught on, but I didn't. But yeah.
We were actually joking this week. I didn't tell you I was going to say this.
Uh-oh.
But this helps you guys get to know Dale. I used a picture of you and Dale in your dating years on my personal social media of you guys at Bible camp, and you're in the tube, and you could see the love, and I was like, oh, he was all in. He wanted to go in for the kiss, I said. And you're like, no, he didn't. And I was like, what? And then you told me he said that he didn't want to kiss because it took away from talking.
He did, because I, made myself available.
Yeah.
And he just didn't, go there. And so finally he said, when we start kissing, we stop talking.
Yeah.
And so,
What a man.
But we did get married, and it was very good. And
well, you had a
okay.
family.
Oh, yes. We were married for 33 years.
Okay, so take us there. Tell us real quick about, now obviously we're going to get to the subject at hand, which is grief. And so we want to do this quick, but just real quick, being married, your family. Just tell us a little bit, maybe one or two real quick highlights.
We lived in Lloydminster for our whole married life, except for we took 1 year away in Japan for a family adventure for the year. I taught English. Dale was an at-home dad, and the kids went into Japanese school. So we had an adventure for a year. We did a lot of traveling. That was really our thing. We decided not to wait until retirement, which is a good thing, apparently. And so we did travel all over the world multiple times. And it's been, I'm so glad we did, because I have amazing memories now. Really, really good times. Favorite country was Egypt, for sure.
Yeah, I was sharing with you that I knew Brennan was going to take us to a new song called Egypt that we had never sung before this morning here. And I was reading through it, knowing your story and stuff, but then I like, wait, this is actually perfect because you guys loved going to Egypt.
Yeah.
It was
that last verse, where I come to your Egypt and take you by the hand, beautiful.
Yeah, that was powerful.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just in a nutshell, because we want to get to this subject. 4 years ago, you and Dale received some life-altering news that forever changed you guys.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, please, just what had happened, what that news was,
For sure.
where you were at in the midst of that moment 4 years ago?
I can. And before I do, I just want to clarify that I'll only speak on my behalf, because I know that there are many grieving people in the world and many other people in our situation, and I will speak from my experience. And I think some our experiences are common and some are everybody's individual. We knew that Dale was having some difficulties with some things like buttoning up his shirt and cutting his nails with a nail clipper and things like that, starting to get some tremors in his legs, fasciculations in the muscles. And we just knew something was wrong, and he had been going to multiple different doctors trying to find out. And he eventually got into Edmonton for an EMG, and I didn't go with him because we knew that ALS was a possibility, but we don't get ALS. Other people get that kind of thing. That doesn't happen. So I didn't go, because I'm like, whatever. Then he had to phone me. I was teaching at the time, and he had to phone me and let me know. And so definitely, our world came crashing down at that moment. And it has never been the same since, nor would I expect it to be. So definitely devastating. We were able to take a little bit of time, about a week, just the two of us, to process the information before we told our kids and our parents and other people, just to kind of get our heads around it a little bit. And I liken it to, when you have a bad dream at night, something devastating is happening in your dream, and you wake up and you're so relieved, and you're like, oh, thank you, that's not true. And I would wake up every day and it was still true. And it was that feeling, that devastating feeling that you don't get relief from. So we recognized the horror and the devastation of the diagnosis, but we decided early on that even though we had great sadness, that we were going to take our journey with gratitude. And so every single day we found something that we could be grateful for. And that was our theme, to be grateful. And I fully believe that God stepped in and gave me peace, because that didn't really make sense to have a lot of peace. We understood right away what the diagnosis meant, but yet we had a lot of peace. We had a lot of work to do. We had a lot of peace. It's kind of like a superhero movie. In a superhero movie, and people are like jumping through the sky and from building to building and throwing things, and then buildings come crashing down, and then there's a slow motion part and all that. That's what it was like living in it. It was the buildings were crashing down, and then sometimes everything was in slow motion, and sometimes people were just like making these major moves, and equipment was flying through the house, and it kind of felt like in a strange way, a superhero movie.
Yeah. You kind of are a superhero. I watched you guys. We'll get to some of your stories in a moment. Not kind of. You are, actually. Let me rephrase that. So 4 years ago, Dale was diagnosed with ALS. I remember the very place I was sitting. I was at your guys' kitchen table, actually, when you guys told me about the diagnosis. And like you just said, other people get ALS. And I had heard of ALS. I knew very little bit about it, but I'd never had like a real close friend go through that battle. And so I had to go home and like Google and figure it out. And so for those who maybe are like me at that moment, who hear the term ALS, know maybe a hair, but not too much, just give us, because you actually kind of have your nursing degree now, after
I
the
could
last
challenge it.
3
I could.
years. Could you just give us in layman's terms, what is ALS? What happens? What does it do? And then we'll tell some of your story.
So ALS is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis.
Layman's terms.
And so it basically the neurons fire in your brain, send a message down your spine out to your nerves, and your body does what you're telling it to do. And in ALS, along the way, those don't fire properly. So the communication doesn't get where it needs to go. So for a large percentage of people with ALS, nothing happens to their brains. Everything stays completely intact, but the body doesn't respond to what it's asked to do. And so there are a couple of different kinds of ALS. Limb onset, which is what Dale had, started in one leg, kind of worked its way across and gradually up his body. Bulbar ALS starts here. So you lose your speaking, your swallowing, your breathing much more quickly, because this is where it begins. There are people who live with it for 6 months and people who live with it for 30 years. It's just a very individual disease. The average age range, or the average lifespan, is 2 to 5 years. And Dale lived for 3.5 with it. That was the only time in his life he was average. So 3.5 years is what we got.
Yeah, and just to kind of paint that picture, Dale was someone that I grew up looking up to, who I felt comfortable going to for counsel, who I, once in a while would look to for my own strength. And it was, for me, and I know that your story is the story of the day, but it was incredibly difficult to just watch this strong, stubborn, maybe determine's a better
Determined.
word.
Yeah.
Determined man move into this place of just complete, physically at least, dependency.
It's very humbling.
On someone else. And so it's a horrible, horrible disease. As you and I began this talk, it was about a month ago.
Yep.
I told you what I was working on and what I was thinking, and you said something that really landed for me, that I felt like this is it. This is what we got to communicate, that I thought would be helpful for us as we press into this Overcome series. You said, well, you got to deal with the grief of the past, you got to deal with the grief of the present, and then you got to deal with the real grief or the future grief. And I was like, that tells the story right there. And so I wanted to just start here by pressing into the grief of the past. What do you mean when you say the grief of the past, and how did that look for you as you began pressing into this season and this diagnosis?
For me, the grief of the past was all about reflection. It was about remembering what we had before the diagnosis, when we were oblivious and just enjoying life. And it was thinking about all of the lasts that I didn't know were lasts at the time. When you're hopeful and you're looking to the future and your whole life together, and you just kind of assume that that's what you're going to have. So it was a lot about remembering the good things and all the blessings, and just being grateful and thankful for what we had, but grieving that was over, that part was done.
You're at the 1 year point right now with Dale having graduated.
Yeah.
When you look back and think of the past, tell us a little bit about what going through that experience of caring and loving and trying to live each day to the full looked like. What did that look like? What did your days look like? What did your time look like?
I mean, it was kind of like living underwater. I don't think the shock ever really went away. I'm not sure it still has now even. even from the diagnosis. I'm not sure that I'm even past that, in a sense. It was surreal. It was incredibly hard work. There were things that changed every week. So we had a lot of medical equipment and lifts and slings and breathing equipment and feeding equipment and cough assists and beds and tracking, and we just had a lot going on. An accessible van. We had to redo where we were staying at the time to make it accessible, and it was, I feel a little bit like I got my nursing degree on the side, and it was really challenging. At the very beginning, I searched for a few scriptures that would kind of carry me through, and one that has kind of stuck with me from Isaiah 43 is, when you walk through the rivers, you will not drown. Just that phrase, and that's pretty much all I had, and I only just not drowning. And I still, sometimes feel like I'm treading water a little bit, but that's the one I hold on to, the promise that I won't drown. Definitely, I'm thankful, like I said, for the peace that I had. And a phrase that that was mentioned to me just recently was, we don't get to choose if we're going to suffer in life, but we do get to choose how we're going to suffer. And that was really meaningful to me too, kind of kept me on track a little bit. So it's what I'm holding on to.
That phrase reminds me of something that Dale said tons in the midst of him battling ALS, and it was this, that we are all terminal. Mm-hmm. And so when you said at the very beginning that you chose to kind of still seek and be people of gratitude, and I know it was a conscious decision for you guys. I think another thing that Dale said just popped in my mind is I don't want to die with ALS. I want to live with ALS. That was something I remember him saying as well. And you guys wanted to press into that. And so you did some crazy stuff. Now, this is your story. Not everybody's going to go into a season like that the same. But for you guys, you did some crazy stuff in the middle of that grief of the past as you look back now. I mean, you traveled the world still.
We did.
With
and
ALS.
I probably would not have, but he was a manager, and he managed it. So he directed everybody.
Tell us a story of like traveling with ALS and what that was like.
So
the chaos, because you've told me it's crazy.
I'm just not sure that I could do it justice, but I'll try. We did Southeast Asia, we did the Caribbean, we did the Southern States, we did lots of traveling with like after the diagnosis of ALS. So once we got into later stages, it was a lot. Let me just put it that way. We took with us everything that we might need and things we might not need, but we used everything we took. We took a power chair, we took a manual chair, we took a commode, we took ceiling tracking. We ordered like standalone ceiling tracking. We took a motorized rotating hospital mattress. We took 2 Trilogy breathing machines, a cough assist machine, batteries and cords and medications and feeding and G-tube equipment. And we filled up on our one trip. I took a picture of just the checked luggage, because the carry-on we had a lot of that too, but the checked luggage were 14 big pieces of checked luggage. And the first trip I did on my own, we didn't have that much, but after that, we never went without our oldest son and or other brothers, sisters, kids, friends, nieces, family members. We took a team with us, at least one other person beside me for the actual flight, because that's a thing in itself, getting somebody who's in a power chair who cannot move onto an airplane and off of an airplane and with the breathing equipment intact. So yeah, it was a challenge. I said after every trip, I'm never doing this again.
Then
until the
he got
next
you to do
one.
it. Oh, man. Sorry, I'm going off script a little bit here,
okay.
Amanda, but this is just too funny to not share. Your Dale has a cousin Dale, and cousin Dale, the younger Dale, and your Dale would get together and talk about his life and put together a bit of a memoir, if you will. And he tells a story of being delayed on a flight in that little memoir book, and how he had to, the medication he took to not go to the bathroom while traveling.
Yep.
ran
Which only
out of
lasts for
time,
so long.
Which only lasts for some time. Then he would just have to go right then and there. And the flight was like super delayed. And he's like, I'm going to go to the bathroom in my pants. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Like that's you guys. Like you just talk like that. You travel, you go for it.
It
Like,
doesn't
was
sound like a
hilarious.
big deal to go to the bathroom.
Oh, no, that sounds
But
like a
it's-
big deal.
It requires a
Do you
Hoyer lift,
imagine?
and slings and motors and all the things. It's quite a thing, yeah. So, and actually that flight was delayed overnight.
Yeah.
So, that was a challenge,
Yeah.
can I just say?
We're all terminal.
Mm-hmm.
You can die with ALS or you can live with.
That's right.
We're all going to suffer, but you can choose how we suffer. Like those are important pieces, I think, that we can listen in on.
Mm-hmm.
Until you've lived that, you don't really have the authority to say that, but you can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that lands for maybe just one person today. Grief of the past. Let's go to the grief of the present.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about your journey since Dale's been gone.
Yeah, it's much as you would imagine that it would be, and it's disappointingly so. Everything changes when you have lost your person, and I felt like I was kind of on edge because I had been in fight and flight for almost 4 years, and to come down from that was a challenge. But I also spent my days kind of looking around and wondering, who's going to die next? Who's next? Is it going to be one of my kids? Is it going to be my parents? Is it going to be a friend? Who's going to die? I'm waiting for somebody to die because I'd been doing that for 4 years. So there was that. I found it hard. Everything was hard to do. Every single thing took courage, even sitting down on my own to watch TV. Everything changes, how you eat, how you sleep, just everything. The courage to step out the front door. And I'm a pretty confident person. The courage to get in my vehicle and drive. The courage to get out of the parking lot at Superstore, like get out of my car and go into the store. The courage to walk into church on my own, especially wearing a mask during COVID and being isolated from everybody in the pews. I learned that all of my emotions are valid. All of them. That it's okay to be sad, and I'm okay. I'm comfortable with being sad. I'm comfortable with crying in front of people. I know what to do with sad now, and I'm getting more comfortable with being happy and recognizing that being happy doesn't mean that I'm happy he's gone. Doesn't mean that I'm happy he died, but like I can still be happy sometimes, and I know that will continue to grow. Dark humor has helped me a lot. There are things I can't say to people who are not ALS widows because it's dark. But they're all coping things. I have felt relief after that amount of time with the caregiving and the huge learning curve and getting up every 2 hours to turn him over at night and all of the things that I needed to do to keep him alive. With a lot of help. I didn't do it on my own, but, it fell on me quite often. And so after he passed away at home, we were able to have him at home, I just sat down on the floor beside his bed, and I just thought, I'm so relieved. That was one of the first things that crossed my mind.
Did you feel guilty?
I felt no guilt.
Why?
I'm
glad you didn't.
Yeah, and I still don't feel guilty, and I, on purpose, don't feel guilty because I made a decision during his illness when I was running ragged that every single day I would tell myself, you are doing everything you can. And I knew I was doing everything I could. There wasn't physically anything more I could do, mentally, emotionally, nothing more I could do. I didn't do it perfectly. More could have been done, but I could not have done more than I did. And I told myself that regularly so that because I knew that after he was gone, I was going to do the shoulda, coulda, woulda thing. So I don't...
Did you do the shoulda, coulda, woulda? Was there anything that made you feel guilty afterwards?
I had to stop and think when I traveled afterwards without him. One of my recovery plans was to get to the East Coast and the West Coast and visit some friends and buy a car. We had to sell I got rid of our accessible van, and my other car wasn't working anymore, and so I needed to buy a vehicle, and I bought myself a nice one, and I had to stop and think about that for a minute, but he would have loved that.
Hope you got yourself a real nice one.
I did.
Oh, good.
The windows work, and my other one didn't, so really that's all I wanted. It was just really hard to go through a drive-through when your windows don't work.
Totally. Let's go to the real grief.
Okay.
Or the future grief. This is an emotional piece, but let's talk it through. When you said to me, Ken, then there's the real grief, then there's the future grief. What were you thinking as you said that?
I once read that the most loving thing that you can do is nurse someone through a terminal illness. And I agreed with that until I learned that the most loving thing you can do is go through that with them so that they can go first. So that they don't have to go through what you are going through. So that you can survive them and grieve them, that they don't have to do that for you. So that was really big for me. And I think I recognize that I have lack of sleep. I have physical ailments that come from grief, widow fog, all of those things. That's definitely what's been happening in my life now. Is that what you asked me? What's happening now? I think at the 1 year point, now I have not gotten over it, because I will never get over it. It will always be there. You don't get over grief, you walk through it, and you learn to carry it with you. And it softens a little bit, but you learn to carry it with you. And I think at 1 year, I've had some people close to me challenge me on some faith questions. And so I've really been thinking things through very deeply. So I've had sort of a little existential crisis, I guess, at this point in my life. So I'm living through that right now. 366 days isn't different than 364 days. I mean, you're still taking the process of grief. They say that it takes 2 years of fresh grief before you start to move on with your processing. So allow myself my 2 years of fresh grief. And sometimes I feel really courageous. I can put on my clothes and I'm like, I got this. I'm on my way, I'm good. And then an hour later, I'll get a grief burst and I'll just be a puddle on the kitchen floor. And that's okay. It just is what it is. You can't prepare for it.
Yeah, we're doing this series. It's called Overcome, but you're like in the middle of overcoming.
Yes.
Like this is your reality right now.
It's not a done deal.
No. It never will be.
Nope.
Like it's not like it's something you will ever forget. It'll always be part of your journey, part of your story.
Yeah, and one of the things that on my better moments, I process, why cannot something good come from this? Something good can come from this. And that's okay.
Yep.
You know, the sadness. Yeah.
So thinking of good, it's if people had watched you, and I know there's some of your friends here today who watched you, the reality is you cannot go through without experiencing some level of PTSD.
That's right.
But as you and I were talking, when you think of good or something good coming, you used a phrase I had never heard of in my life. And it was post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
Something good.
Yes.
Talk to us about this phrase. Where did you get it? What is it?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, post-traumatic growth?
That's not my phrase. I heard it on a podcast, and it was in the context of, in grief, we often think we have to settle now. We have to learn to cope, and life is never going to be the same, and now we just kind of have to make it through. And it'll be okay, we'll make it. And the concept is that it could be better than okay. We don't have to just settle. We can grow, and having grief doesn't mean, if you have a grief burst, doesn't mean you're going backwards. You're just in the process. It's about being okay with being sad, and I think it's a lot about listening to the stories that we tell ourselves. I've told myself some stories that make me really sad when I imagine what life will be like for me from now on, and I have to really filter which ones of those are actually true and which ones are just stories in my brain. So that's a lot of my post-traumatic growth. I mean, the whole thing is terrifying and beautiful at the same time. And so, you know, when you're younger, you're trying to figure out what your worldview is, and you're thinking about your place in the world and everybody else's place in the world and what you think about things. And I feel like this has caused me to zoom out, if you can imagine zooming out on the world. And my worldview is now my eternity view. And I thought I already was doing that. You know, you think about eternity and all the things that you're taught and all the things that you should think. And now I'm actually really seeing it in a different way as I zoom out and I think about my place in the world, and growing towards truth. Yeah.
Yep. To help you with growth, you set a word of the year to kind of serve as a guiding word, principle, force. Tell us really quick your word of the year and how you see it being leveraged to help you grow.
My word for the year is pursue. And I've chosen it because it's action-oriented, it's positive for me. And I really, at this point in time, need to pursue my identity. I felt like I lost a lot of my identity through this process. When we were first diagnosed, we ended up having to make a move. I gave up temporarily my home and my community and my friends and my church and my job and everything that was familiar to me for 3.5 years. And so then I was alone, which was the biggest thing, obviously, of all. And because it changes all of your family dynamics, it changes your friendships, I really felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. So I'm pursuing my identity, pursuing my faith, pursuing what's next in my life.
So what is next?
I have no idea. I'm pursuing something.
Good for you.
I'm a balance between I'm walking forward, and if doors open, then I'm walking through, and if they close, I don't. I've handed in my resignation for my job, and I'm a free agent. So
In your prime.
Pardon me?
In your prime too.
In my prime.
Yeah. Sign for the big bucks and go to a winner, get a championship.
I'm looking forward to walking beside people in some capacity.
Yeah. I coached Amanda's boys in football, so.
Yeah.
Anyways. As a means to kind of wrap us up here.
Yep.
We're in a season where many people have lost loved ones. Not even necessarily always COVID related. Yours wasn't.
Right.
Some have lost some from COVID, others haven't. We've lost people in our fellowship. And with the caveat that, as you started, that this is your story, and your story isn't going to be the same. You can't speak for everyone.
Yep.
But nonetheless, with that caveat, is there any thoughts you would share with someone that is grieving? And is there some advice that you could give us who have friends that are grieving and we just don't know what to do? So can you speak to like the griever and to us who are friends of grievers and just what do we do?
I mean, for grievers, it's your own journey, right? And however you choose to take your journey is the right way to take it. There isn't a pattern. There isn't a rule. And whatever you need to do for your grief, that's the right thing to do. One of the things I did learn was that other people were often very uncomfortable talking to me, especially the first time. And I recognized that they were uncomfortable because it was awkward. And I think deep down inside, people are thinking about their own mortality. What if they have to go through this? How would they can't imagine being in that situation. And they want to help, they want to say something, but they don't know what to say. So I made a conscious choice to break the ice with people, and I just dropped Dale's name right away. In a new conversation with somebody, I would just say something that brought him up so that they would know it was okay to say his name, to talk about him. Because in some ways, you kind of end up helping others help you when you're in grief. And it should be the other way around, and you do get lots of support.
We want to
and
help, we just don't know what to do.
Exactly. I would say first thing is say their name, right? And tell stories or memories or anything you have, because we want to know that our person isn't forgotten. We want to know that they had value, and that they are remembered. So that would be a really big thing for me, is to hear about him. So, when you tell stories about him or you use his name very comfortably, it's so healing for me in my process. I remember learning at university about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And what I didn't know until recently is that those 5 stages are not the stages that you go through when you're grieving. She wrote those specifically for a person in a dying position. So the person who is afflicted is the person who will go through those stages. The rest of us, we don't have stages. We just bounce around all over the place with all of those. So that's not a thing. I didn't really know that. I thought that was really interesting. Something my sister taught me right near the beginning was her research on the ring theory. And the ring theory is that the person who is in crisis is in a little ring on a piece of paper. You put their name, and then you move out a ring and you would put in the name of the person who's closest to them. And then you move out to the next ring and put in maybe some family members, out to the next ring, some friends, and so you move out with the rings of your relationships. And so we're all in those rings somewhere in our relationship to other people. And the concept with the ring theory is that if you want to support somebody, you support in, you love in, you give in to any circle that's smaller than your circle. If you want to complain or question or grieve, you grieve to any circle outside of your circle. And that was made really clear to me by somebody who was in the middle circle with a cancer diagnosis. And somebody from an outer circle had come to visit them and said, "You're just making me really uncomfortable. I don't know what to do, and I can't see you anymore." And they made it about them instead of loving in and telling that to somebody in the outside circle. So
I love into you,
yeah,
because you're in that inner circle.
Yeah.
And when I want to press in on my questions and my hurts, I go to the circle outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Good
Yeah,
advice.
I thought it was, and everybody's going to get their turn in the middle at some point.
Yeah. We all suffer.
We all have our turn. Yeah.
We choose how we suffer, like
Yeah.
you said, right?
Yeah. And I just want to say I
Go ahead.
have a most amazing friends and family and support in my life, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So these things are not things that I have struggled with a lot, because I'm very thankful for the blessings that I've had. Practically, for other people, any sentence that begins with "at least," don't say it.
Take it a step further. At least what?
At least he's not suffering anymore. At least he's in a better place. At least you can find another relationship. At least, anything at least is not helpful. Another thing that I have found that's not helpful is, tell me what I can do. Let me know how I can help. I'm not going to, first of all. And secondly, I don't...
Sounds like that landed. People are...
And secondly, I don't know what to ask for. I don't know how to ask somebody to shovel my driveway. I don't know, in those beginning stages, I couldn't even think for myself, let alone what I needed from somebody else.
So what could they say instead?
I would say you phone somebody up and you say, "I am at the store, and I'm swinging by your place on my way home. What can I pick up for you? I'm coming over, and I'm bringing muffins." Whatever. I know it's just snowed, and I can be over in 10 minutes with a shovel to shovel your driveway. Is that okay? You don't even need to come outside. Those kind of things, like, just do them. Just do those things. And I'm going to ask if it's okay, I guess, but, you know,
Yeah,
just
you want
taking...
permission, but yeah, I'm tracking.
Yeah, yeah. I think really it's just about standing beside someone, even just being quiet. If you don't know what to say, just be quiet. Just be with them, especially at the very beginning, and be patient, because I know that I retold my story a lot of times to the same people, and they were very patient with me, and I was just getting my head and my heart lined up and making it real for me, and I needed to tell it again and again and again. And so there's definitely a patient concept. And then, you know, initiating contact, right? And continuing to initiate contact over time, even when you've got over it. Your person hasn't gotten over it yet. For me, and I speak only for myself, hugs are a thing, because you don't get any touch. And I miss holding his hand, and I miss his hugs. And I don't know if you know, the average length of a hug is 3 seconds. For a hug to have any kind of therapeutic benefit at all, it needs to last 20 seconds. And that is not something you can do with everybody. It's a little awkward, but it's a thing, you know. Just taking that time, I guess, and just being comfortable with it. And if you're not comfortable talking to I mean, we know if you're not comfortable when you're coming to talk to us. And if you say something wrong, we forgive you. You know, just try, I guess, not to avoid it. Yeah, recognizing special days. Yeah.
Let's try.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was just going to also say, in terms of grief, there are two concepts in grief: hijacking grief, and minimizing grief, or shaming your grief. If you're in a conversation with somebody and they're expressing their grief, and all of a sudden you realize you're talking about your life and identifying somehow with them, you've hijacked their grief. Or the, you know, the at least statements that would be more like the grief shaming. So there are lots of resources out there, for sure.
Thanks.
Say their name.
Thanks for coming, Amanda. Thanks for being courageous. Thanks for being a woman who will step out. And even though you're in the middle of overcoming, just still be vulnerable and help us, because we're walking that journey in one way or another, all of us.
Right.
And so, I mean, that just means a lot to us. You just used the word resources, and I wanted to add this for you, or perhaps someone that's maybe watching online. It's important to have community to process grief with, and maybe you have people already, but if you don't, our friends at the Bridge Church are actually hosting a weekly grief share right now. Some of you are familiar with the Wirtz family, and they're a big part of that. And so I just wanted to say, if you're looking for a place to find just a next level of community and to be a part of a grief share, the Bridge Church would love to have you be a part of that with them. Their website is bridgechurch.ca, and it's right on their homepage, and there's a place where you could go in and sign up, and they would be more than willing to have you be a part of that conversation. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of that. They're our friends. They are not our competition. They are our allies in the kingdom. And so we wanted to make sure you who are here, and those of you who are online who might be looking for something as well, that's a resource that is available for you. I want to wrap up. I want to pray for you.
Okay.
I want to pray for those here, those online. We're all at different places in our journey, and suffering has impacted us in some way or another. So I just want to put that at the foot of the throne as we wrap up. Holy Papa, we just humbly come and just acknowledge the suffering this side of heaven that in some way or another we've all been affected by. And I thank you that Amanda has come and courageously in the middle of her story shared today. And I just pray first and foremost for her right now. I want to pray that you would just bless her, that you bring a peace about her, and that as the exhaustion that sets in from sharing like this hits this afternoon, she might just be able to sigh and settle into your arm, to your presence, to your love. I pray for those who are listening right now in person or online, who are grieving and hurting. and have recently perhaps even lost someone so close. We cannot understand each person's suffering, as we can't even explain it away. We just know it's our reality. And so we just pray, Lord, that you would draw near. Your word says that you bless those who mourn, that you will comfort those who are mourn. And we just ask that they would sense that, know that, and experience that right now. And for us who are walking with a friend who is grieving, would you just guide us and direct us? By your Spirit, would you just allow us to be helpful, to be that community that allows the legacy of that person to live on via our stories, by our helping hand? Would you just use us to bring about greater levels of healing? Jesus, we know you love us, that you identify with every suffering person that's a part of this today. May we sense you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Oh, how high would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you hide? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you grace the other side. And oh, how long have I chased rivers from lowly seas to where they rise, against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. And in the highlands and the heartache, you're neither more nor less inclined. And I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. So I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, 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 how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend apart? From where your feet rest on the sunrise, to where you sweep the sinners past. And oh, how fast would you come running if just to shadow me through the night, and trace my steps through all my failures, and walk me out the other side. For who could dare ascend that mountain, the valleyed hill called Calvary, before the one I call Good Shepherd, who like a lamb was slain for me? So I will praise you on the mountain, and I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, of all valleys, come the pastures we call grace. A mighty river flowing upwards from a deep but empty grave. So I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is, in the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, 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 oh.
Thank you so much for joining us today for Online Church. If something that you heard today resonated with you, touched your heart, we would love to chat about that. If you would like someone to listen, if you would like to meet up, we would love to do that. And so you can contact us through our website. Either Pastor Ken or myself would love to get together and to meet and just to process more. But our prayer for you this week is that Jesus would show you that he is a faithful friend, that he is with you even in times of grief and even in times of sorrow, that you would feel him so near. And that if you don't know Jesus, that you would really feel the freedom to talk to someone about that. Again, we would love to chat with you if you want to know more about what it means to follow Jesus, what it means to have him help to share your grief with you. So again, please just reach out to us via our website or that text number, and we would love to be in touch. Friends, go with grace this week and go knowing that we have a Heavenly Father who cares so much for us.